All right. Well, hey, Blendi, thank you so much for joining me on the Monkey Podcast Show. I have been a big fan of yours ever since I was on your podcast, and then got to see you afterwards, and then see you in person at the VRMA with your panda head and the charisma and the energy that you bring. It was really cool to see that what my thought process of in the VA world and virtual assistants, you really have like shown me behind the curtains and showed me that that's not really what I thought it was. And you're really bringing to light this whole new side of it. So, again, I'm now a current client of your company, Delegate. We just started, and I can firsthand, talk about my services, your services. But I would love for you to introduce yourself, talk about what you do, how you got into this. I know a little bit more about you now. That I'll see if you talk about it, but and maybe why you got to this point. But please share the audience and anyone listening who you are and what you're doing for the industry and how you're able to help people.
Yeah, definitely. So I started out as a property manager myself, like a lot of people. I think a lot of people in the STR industry, software providers, vendors, they all started somehow as maybe a host or a property manager themselves or a cleaner. And so I had a similar story on my end where I was a property manager, and at the time, the property management company I was working with, they were scaling up, and I was so inundated because I had all of these different tasks and responsibilities to take care of. I was the go-to guy for guest services. I was coordinating maintenance, housekeeping, and it became like it just became so time consuming for me, and I realized that like I'm only one person. I can't do everything myself. But I also lived in New York City, which is the most expensive place, one of the most expensive places in America. So like, going to my superiors and saying, "Hey, like I need to hire more people because I can only do this. I can't do this myself." That wasn't an option. And that's when I realized that you can get so much value as a company out of hiring outside of where you're located. Not for all jobs, but for a lot of key responsibilities, whether it's customer service, whether it's marketing, whether it's research. There's so much that you can outsource overseas. We, at our company, Delegate, now we provide overseas staffing solutions for short-term rental companies, but also for vendors like yourself, growing startups that they need resources to get a lot of those tasks and responsibilities off their plate so they can focus on growing.
So, and I totally agree, and I feel like at every point you get to in a business, you get to a point where you can't wear all the hats. You have to start outsourcing or delegating those positions to other people, and it is really great to know that there are options of maybe individuals out there that you're going to be delegating to that now know more about, or maybe what you're trying to look into. They already know how to do it because maybe they've done it for someone else, or and that's kind of what I found on my side. I mean, you're helping me with doing some things that maybe I wasn't really familiar with, but you had already done it, or you had already known how to do it, so you were able to showcase that to your team. So like when you got started in this, you probably didn't have someone in front of you already showing you these things. So like how'd you get to the point of finding the right VA, training them, get them to the point where how the situation was with you getting onto your business was very seamless? I mean, obviously that's is that what you had when you were looking at it, when you were looking to grow your team with virtual assistants?
When I first started, my main priority was finding someone that could handle guest services and guest communications. I didn't look for someone with like experience per se. I didn't look for someone that like had experience working with like this PMS or that PMS. I wanted someone that had a hospitality background. So like it's in there someone that has character traits that will make them successful with a little bit of training. And then I started just training people myself. Whether it was in customer service or if it was sales, I was the one kind of cold calling other property managers. And then like I would say, okay, you see how I spoke here? Like you see my tone when the person picked up the phone? Like this is what you should emulate. So in the beginning, it was very much like bringing people on that have the character traits for success, and then training them, and now it's when we have business owners come to us, they're like, "This is the problem that we have. Can you find someone that can already solve it?" Now we look for people that already have those competencies and we just match them with the business owner.
And then in your situation, are you not really recreating the wheel? So if you know that something works for something else and you're asking these pain point questions and they say, hey, I'm looking for something like this, are you kind of taking the same playbook and changing it up a little bit for them and implementing that in their business?
Yeah. Yeah. So like there are some people that come to us that they're like, this is what our end goal is. How do we get there? Like this is our process, or we don't really have a process. And we'll also help along the way in building out that process for them because we understand that like the people you have, and you this applies to your colleagues like stateside, it also applies to overseas talent. The people you have are only as good as the processes you have in place. If you don't have a process in place and you don't have, SOPs, your people are not going to perform very well. So we help business owners with that as well.
So you do, so you are helping create like the SOP for the business if they don't really necessarily have one. So that way your team is helping precisely.
Yeah, so it depends on the position, but like I'll give you an example. Let's say you're hiring like an operations manager and you know, you're not in the position to pay $100,000 a year as a growing startup for an operations manager. The ops person that we would hire for you at a fraction of the cost, by the way, would come in and actually implement those processes and procedures for your business. So you don't have to do it yourself. And so like give an example of a property management company. We worked with this PM that had 30 units. They had no SOPs at all. And the ops manager that they brought in completely overhauled their whole customer service standard operating procedures. He didn't have to do much, the owner, other than approve of these SOPs. So it's a big help bringing people in that actually are operationally minded.
So essentially you could build a whole business around your team. You could have an operations manager, you could have someone come in and do the customer service, you could have someone do the sales. I mean, you really could outsource a whole team and build a functional, workforce with your team.
I'll give you an example, like our company, Delegate. I'm still the only American at Delegate. I've built a whole company with overseas talent, whether it's marketing, sales, customer success. You're able to 100% build a whole infrastructure. Obviously, you're still leading it and you're still the one making decisions and pushing the vision of the company. But I think people have this misconception that, you're growing a company, you have to have everybody there in one place. It's a benefit to have everybody in one place, but it's also an extremely expensive benefit at scale.
What I like so far about partnering with you guys is that it's you kind of walk before you run. You guys put in a position to where we're kind of crawling actually right now, kind of getting all this stuff working out, getting all the right pieces together. What was maybe a misconception for me that this is going to be too hard getting into is actually the complete opposite. It's really going at a good pace and it's helping in the process. Is that something that you realize that helped with for you that you wanted to implement when you grew your business, or um, is that just kind of like trial and error? And you just realize that, how did you pick that? How did you pick up on that?
I think like especially when you're working with like a new company, it's super important to understand what their end goal is. And when you're starting from scratch, you only have one opportunity to build the process well. And like in the example of us working with you, we're in a position where we're helping you build out the process that's going to lead to you having an increase in sales. So we want to get it right the first time. And there's a back and forth between you, the business owner, and us, the outsourcing company. We want to have the process like be as good as possible before we start, going out and calling potential customers and whatnot.
And that's exactly how I feel. I mean, I feel like so far I have a game plan exactly what we're going to do after this step is done. Not even, the first step's not even done yet, but in my mind, I know the next moving pieces. And I also know that the person that's helping me right now, at the same time, they can help me get someone else down the road if I need help with sales or emails or whatever it is.
because they know the process already.
A million percent. I know you have companies as small as Cam Monkey. I'm sure companies bigger. Like, what's the biggest or what's the average amount of VAs that your businesses that work with you have on purpose? Like when would you need multiple ones? I mean, I know for me, one's great right now, and that's why I said like you get to really crawl before you are running into anything. I don't feel like I'm overwhelmed at all. So like when you look at these right businesses, I'm sure all are different sizes and structures. Is that in that beginning process you already know, okay, they need three right away? Or do you start with one and then build onto it?
So this is where you start. There's actually different levels of delegation. So the first level of delegation, and like a majority of our companies, to answer your first question, they have like 3 to 4 people staffed. Now, you're a growing business. The first thing you have to do is ask yourself, what are all the low level tasks and responsibilities I'm doing every single day that's above my pay grade? And like where it will, if I have someone do this task, and this task for me, it'll free up some time for me to make the business more money. So for most businesses, that is an executive assistant. That's the first hire, because an executive assistant can remind you when you have meetings. An executive assistant can make sure your calendar and your email inbox are all updated. An executive assistant can do research for you that would otherwise take you maybe an hour. That's like the first person. And then as your business grows, you need more specific roles. So you need a salesperson, you need a marketing person, you need someone to send out emails, you need someone to edit your content. This podcast right now, if you're pushing, let's say, 7 or 8 of these podcasts every single week, are you going to, sit down every single night and edit everything and create clips from it? That's going to take a lot of your time. That's something you could delegate. It's the number of people that you need for your organization just depends on where your company is at in its growth phase.
It reminds me of a quote I heard once. It's if you want to make $100,000 a year, you can't be doing a $15 an hour job. And it kind of relates what you said. And at a certain point, you got to wear a lot of hats. But then at a certain point, you got to start taking those hats off and delegating to those that can do it. Um, Something just kind of when you're saying that, whatever happens, I mean, this is more like not a worst case scenario, but like, what if someone's a company's using you for the executive assistant, then they get a sales, then they get a mark. At one point, they might be really reliant on you. Is there a way where they could ever be like, I really want these people and I want to
Yeah,
hire them full time? Is that ever a possibility, or you're like, no, those are my people?
you're
And
talking
so
the dirty little secret of my line of business.
I imagine I imagine that would happen if you get someone that helps you build a business from the ground up. I would feel reliant on that person. Like, oh my gosh, they just did everything. Like, you must get to a point where like they're either like now really reliant on you, or they're like, I want that person.
Yes. So that has happened in the past. And so other companies, what they'll do is they have like these crazy contracts that's like they're like non-competes, and that's one way to go about it. The thing that we've realized as a company is like if another company wants to bring on our talent and hire them directly, then they're going to find any way to do it. And if it's to the benefit of the hire, then we're fine with it, because we understand like we've given that company so much value that they're in a position where they just want to hire the person directly now. We will, we'll charge like a buyout fee for that, but other than that, like we're not going to stop anyone from hiring directly. We actually have another model where people have experience hiring overseas talent, and they know how to deal with compliance, payroll, and they'll come to us and be like, "We just want you to find the best people possible, and like we'll pay you a headhunting fee." And so we do that as well. We're not going to say no to that.
That makes a lot more sense. And again, if you were able to train one person, I'm sure you're able to train other people to do that. As you're a growing company yourself, like you must have multiple people. So that is good to know. Maybe they can't have this person, but you could help them get someone just like that person that they could still be trained by the person that helped them. So that's a good point. And that's what I was feeling like. I was like, wow, if this person really helps me, I want that person for myself only.
Yeah.
I'm sure most other people must feel that way or ever got to that
Oh,
point.
it happens all the time. And it's not like, if anything, like what ends up happening is like the person is so impressed by this hire that they come to us again and they're like, hey, I've got some experience dealing with overseas talent. Can I just hire someone directly from you? And we're like, yeah, we have the sourcing team, we have the recruitment team for it. Like we will help you find the right person for your position. And that applies to customer service, sales. I have, like, I'll just shout out to our chief operating officer. She has managed teams of like thousands of people, and she's based in the Philippines, and that's an executive level position. So I tell businesses all the time, like, VAs are not low level, no low level positions. Like, you can find an overseas hire that is like executive in their level.
And I bet that's one of the biggest misconceptions that you probably get. And that's what I've already seen right now. The people that you put me in front of on your team are quality, high level people where maybe you think, like, who am I getting? But you're really getting top tier people. And to end on what you were just saying, like, if people are in a position where they're looking to get outsourcing some of their tasks, looking to delegate, how do they find you? Where do how do they get to the location, to the website? How do they look for more information?
They can go to delegate.co to find us. Also, if you're watching this and you're on like LinkedIn or social media, LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me personally. I love to put out content and talk about delegation and overseas hiring. So if you just want to get your feet wet with some content and learn more about it, visit my LinkedIn page. And if you're like, oh my God, I need a VA right now, I'm overwhelmed, or I'm trying to grow my business more, visit delegate.co.
I appreciate it. Again, I am a user and so far has been amazing, and I can already see how it's going to be changing my business. So I don't know how I held out for so long, but maybe I was just waiting for the right people. And so you definitely are those people, and great company. And again, thank you for taking time out of your day and joining the Cam Monkey Podcast show, and look forward to seeing you at the next conference.
Thank you, Alex. I'll see you at the next one.
Sounds good.